Hello there. I thought I'd just read through and perhaps make a few comments about an article in The Guardian by David Conn and Felicity Lawrence that came out on Thursday the 10th of October, so pretty recently. The title is Lucy Letby, Police and CPS Handling of Case Raises New Concerns About Convictions. Subheading is exclusive. Lucy Letby's barrister says application challenging verdicts is being prepared using expert medical evidence. I'll just read it through and then interject with a few comments as I go along, as per usual. When the public inquiry into the crimes, I put that in quotes obviously, crimes that didn't exist, of the former nurse Lucy Letby opened in Liverpool last month, its chair, Lady Thirlwall, dismissed concerns about the safety of the convictions as, quote, noise. Well, that's very disrespectful, isn't it? Anyway. The judge cautioned that questions being raised were increasing the distress of parents whose children had died or had been harmed. That's pure manipulation by that Lady Justice Thirlwall there. Of course, you can feel for the parents of having been put through this, well, having lost their children and then been told this lie, and now it's going to be reversed, and then they're going to have to go back essentially to finding out what did happen. So they've been treated abominably, but you don't punish an innocent person, and you don't tell people to stop asking questions about miscarriages of justice. That's pure manipulation by these creatures of the establishment, isn't it? It's typical of someone like her, Thirlwall. That's why they're chosen. That's why they're chosen for these jobs, you know. Lucy Letby was found guilty across 2 trials of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015-2016. Thirlwall pointed out that in May this year, the Court of Appeal refused Lucy Letby permission to appeal, and she said it was not the role of her inquiry to review the convictions. Yeah, well, it's all about the process, you know. It doesn't matter whether an innocent person's in prison or not to these people, just as long as the process was done, you know. It doesn't matter how bad the process is or how unjust it is. You just say, oh, we've done it, and they checked it, and it's meaningless, utterly meaningless, utterly bankrupt. Yet questions about the case and the number of experts raising them have continued to mount. Lucy Letby is being represented by a new barrister, Mark MacDonald, and a number of specialists, including leading neonatologists, who are doctors who specialise in treating premature babies, of which Dr. Evans was not one, and never was one, are voluntarily working with him. That's a really good sign, isn't it, that they're doing it voluntarily. Shows you their commitment and their concern, the level of their concern. It's a bit of I'm just going to put the light in that. It's a bit bright coming through. Where was I? Yeah, so they're voluntarily working with Mark MacDonald, which is really good, on an application, to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Having examined the detail, these experts consider there are more plausible alternative causes of the baby's deaths and collapses than those for which Lucy Letby was convicted. The Guardian can now report on further key concerns about the case, including the approach taken by Cheshire Police and the Crown Prosecution Service and the conduct of the trials. Yes, some really important stuff coming up here to do with the CPS. The first section here is called the prosecutor's fallacy. At Lucy Letby's first trial, the prosecution used a chart that showed which nurses were on shift when babies were allegedly attacked. Just want to analyse the way this is being described. Okay, well, yeah. The chart was presented to the jury to illustrate the central allegation that Lucy Letby was the one constant presence, of the section of all deaths and all crashes that they'd cherry picked. Really, they'd only picked. That's why I paused here, just to keep reiterating. It's all come from Breary, primarily, and people have fed into him. But he's collated that. He's only picked cases where she's on duty. Cases. He's only picked crashes. He's only recorded crashes when she's on duty. He's not recording crashes per se because they're not recorded. So necessarily she's always on duty because he's only picking ones when she's on duty. He's only picking deaths when she's on duty. He's precisely not picking any when she's not on duty. And then that information gets handed over to the police. Now, I believe absolutely that the police would have handed that to Evans. So they all get on board. They all get around the table, effectively. They don't have to be in the same room. Just do it all electronically. But I believe Evans had interactions with these consultants before he even contacted the NCA. It's about proving it, though. But even if he didn't, they all got on board together. They all knew what they were trying to do. He only chose, Breary, only chose cases or instances, deaths, crashes, which aren't normally recorded at this hospital, when she's on duty. So you have to create it's not a surprise. Oh my God. He didn't come up, oh my God, I've created a chart here. Oh, it's all her. I didn't realise that. It's all her, because he's choosing them because she's on duty from the beginning. And never doing anything else. Never doing anything else. Its use as talking about this chart, its use has prompted unusually vocal criticism from leading statisticians. They argue that the chart represents a classic example of the prosecutor's fallacy, in which an investigation starts with only a suspicion and a case is built to support it, rather than all possible evidence and explanations having been rigorously explored. Well, it's not. It's as I just went through. It's clearer than that. They've only chosen instances where he knows she's on duty. That's the basis for him collating these so-called cases. He's not looking at all crashes or all deaths. He's looking at ones when he knows she's on duty. He's not surprised that she's on duty in them because he already knows. And he's getting them all. He's collecting them. He's not finding them. He's collecting them en route as well, because his suspicions are from June 2015. His suspicions, his idée fixe, his malice, his enmity, his vileness is starting in June. His desire to scapegoat, his desire to blame someone rather than himself and the doctors and the hospital as a whole for the failing unit. Jane Hutton, a professor of statistics at the University of Warwick, said of the shift chart and other elements of the case, "It's a large pile of crockery, much of which is broken. Such a pile that does not hold water, however big it is." I mean, it's all right, but it's not really specific to. It's a bit of a vague analogy. I really It's not getting to the point of the matter, is that it's constructed. It's not about it being broken. It's not about broken crockery. It's that it is deliberately. It's actually not broken crockery. And this is the thing they won't grasp and nettle. It's a building a wall. The wall is a lie, and the lie is that there were crimes, and the lie is that Lucy Letby committed these crimes that didn't happen actually. So, but they're building a very solid wall actually out of bricks, not out of broken things, because they have a very definite aim in sight to get her off the unit. And when that doesn't work, then they want the police in. Had it worked, then the police never would have come in. But they're building a very solid wall to scapegoat and push somebody off the unit. That was their original intention, and they would have left it at that had Lucy Letby not brought a grievance and not forced them to apologise for their bullying. They're on a campaign, and they're not using broken crockery to do it. They're building up a set of bricks, as a wall of incorrect accusations. So I don't really go with that at all. I think it's a misunderstanding of what's happened. Misapprehension. The Thirlwall inquiry has heard that the police investigation was based on statistical coincidence from the beginning. I don't think these are quite accurate, personally. As I say, because it's constructed. They're not finding themselves in a coincidence. He's collating them. Breary's collating them in a deliberate way. He's not looking at the problems in the unit and then go, oh my God, it's Lucy Letby. No, he's collating it en route and building it en route. I believe because of a prior enmity that they have for her. And it solidifies and it grows. It grows over time. According to the document seen by The Guardian, 7 doctors collaborated. Where we are. 7 doctors collaborated on compiling a report to police in May 2017. Some interesting stuff coming out here that wasn't specific before. That's exactly what they're doing. They're not building up a bunch of crockery. They're compiling a report. But it's Breary at the spearhead of this, with Jayaram as a close second, as he's kind of a chief officer, as it were. Chief Witchfinder assistant. It presented details, this report, that they gave to the police, which the police obviously gave to Evans, I believe. It presented details of 13 babies who had died and 8 more who had deteriorated. Just want to go over these numbers again. Across 2015 to 2016, I believe there are at least 19 deaths. There are 17 on the FOI, but we know there are 2 missed off that FOI because there are 2 deaths in August and October 2015, where there are no figures in the FOI. And we know there are 2 deaths there because they end up as murder charges. So you've got to add 2 to 17, that's 19. If they've missed off deaths, 2 of them, they may have missed off other deaths. And they may have wrongly categorised, for whatever reason, for their own benefit, usually, for statistical reasons, they've miscoded them as stillbirths. So I'm thinking 19 plus, whatever the plus is. It's not a definite plus, but I think it's at least 19. So why are they talking about 13 deaths? Well, they're talking about what ends up being called the indictment period, which is June 2015 to end of June 2016. It's a completely arbitrary period, isn't it? If you're looking to find out what happens across 2 full years, why are you choosing that arbitrary period? Well, it begins when Breary gets it into his head that he needs to blame someone. That's why. That's why it doesn't begin at the beginning of the year. And that's why it doesn't go to the end of 2016, because there's a death. There's a death of a late neonate baby after Lucy Letby is taken off the unit. But nobody's interested in that. So we've got 13 there. So there's a selection of deaths. Why are they doing that? And we've got to remember that there's 7 on the indictment. There's 7 charges of murder. So they're compiling a report of all the babies. So they would try to get her for all of them, but it says here 8 more that deteriorated. As we know, they don't record these deteriorations, so-called crashes. Breary's doing it on the hoof. He's not doing it for crashes per se. He's not concerned about crashes. He decides what to crash as well. He's deciding what it is. He's deciding what a deterioration is. I mean, there could have been 150 deteriorations over the full 2 years. But he's just chosen 8 of them. They're not recorded, so he's created 8 of them in a sense, in terms of a record of them. All the other ones, and there could have been well over 100, all gone by the by. Why has he chosen those 8? Again, like the deaths, because Lucy Letby is on them, is there. Well, happens to be on duty. He's just trying to attach things to her, and everything else is missed out. That's not a pile of crockery, that's building a wall of, or maybe the wall isn't the right analogy. He's creating a kind of machine of injustice by leaving out all the cases of deaths and all the cases of actual crashes which aren't recorded anyway, because they're not of any use to him in his program, in his purpose. They said, who's they? I don't know who they are. The 7 doctors. They said Lucy Letby had been present at 11 of the deaths. Oh right, this is a new bit of information to me. I've never read that or heard that anywhere else. Adding, the likelihood of this occurring by chance alone is very low. Okay, that's what they've said in this report, 11 deaths, but there's only 7 on the indictment. So we must necessarily infer from this that 4 of the deaths that they tried to pin on her, they couldn't. 4 of them they tried to pin on her, they couldn't, so we're left with 7. Go back to that original figure of 19 deaths across the 2 years. What we're looking at, rather than this arbitrary slice of time that they've chosen, who's choosing that slice of time? Breary is, and the doctors and the gang is, and then Evans does, and then the CPS does, and the police does, and the prosecution does, this arbitrary slice of time. Why don't you look at the full 2 years and see how many, why don't you look at those full 2 years? And Lucy Letby's blamed for 7 of them. So that's just about a third, just over a third of them. So what's happening with all the other deaths? Oh, they've got to all be automatically explainable, haven't they? What's happened with all the other sudden deteriorations and crashes? We don't know how many there are. It could be over 100. Oh, they're automatically explainable and expected, aren't they? They have to be, because they can't pin them on her. This is why the statisticians, the woolliness about the broken crockery is not the right analogy. This is very finely determined. It's finely designed and determined. It's not made out of broken crockery. It's engineered. It's engineered to persecute. It's engineered to persecute and to scapegoat. The likelihood of this occurring by chance alone is very low. They say of the 11 deaths that they say that Lucy Letby was present. Well, present's a very, I don't know whether this is the journalists saying what they said. It's not in quotes, but it just means she's on shift. She isn't necessarily in the same room for all of these deaths. Well, we know already. Well, with certainly one of the cases, it ends up as a murder conviction. She hadn't met the baby when the X-ray was taken, which the prosecution say shows the harm being caused with all the air in the stomach. She hadn't even met the baby. And all of these cases are going to fall one by one, but it just needs one, I think, to create a domino effect. In their opening statement to the inquiry, hospital managers said, and a friend has sent me a PDF of the statement, so I've got to read through that at some point, so thank you to my friend from the group I'm in. Hospital managers said that when they finally went to Cheshire Police on the 5th of May 2017, which they only did because Lucy Letby was going to be coming back and the consultants forced them to, as it were. Wouldn't have gone to them otherwise. It was explained, quotes, this is in quotes, it was explained that there was a notable high statistical relationship between Lucy Letby and babies deteriorating on the unit, but no other evidence. Well, because she's there so much as well, you've got to factor that in. She's there more than any other individual nurse, and she's doing more nights, and she's looking after more high acuity babies. I keep saying the same thing, because she's the one with that extra training, and the vast majority of the other nurses don't have. They have to ring her up when she's not working to ask her about things. When she's in doing social things like salsa classes, they're ringing her up to ask her things. That's how much they're relying on her. Of course she's going to have a higher connectivity to things that have happened because she's there more. You know, if you were going to blame it on a machine that was there 24 hours a day, this is the stupidity of this. Let's say you had decided not to blame it on a human being, you blamed it on a machine that was there 24 hours a day. It's like saying just because the machine's there 24 hours a day, it's responsible for everything. It's just mad, you know. Well, it's evil. At a subsequent meeting a week later, according to the manager's statement, this is a quote again. Well, I'm just going to go over that last quote I did. But no other evidence. Exactly. No evidence then. No evidence in the intervening period. No evidence now. Never any evidence. Never any evidence. This is a prosecution and a conviction built on zero evidence. Zero evidence. That's the thing to keep in mind. It's not anything. It's not even broken crockery. It's nothing. It's nothing other than malice, other than bullying, other than scapegoating, other than a witch hunt. It's nothing other than that. Nothing other than that. Never was and isn't now. And never can be. At a subsequent meeting a week later, according to the manager's statement, this is quotes, this bit. Assistant Chief Constable of Cheshire, Darren Martland, said, quote, "This is uncomfortable as there is no specific allegation at this point to suggest a criminal act." So he's uncomfortable with the idea of going forward with it, I suppose. 5 days, it didn't stop them though, did it? Didn't stop them. They found a way. They found a way to get over their discomfort and enter their most useful sociopath, Dewey Evans. 5 days later, Cheshire Police announced that they'd opened a criminal investigation. So they seemed to bear that discomfort. Didn't take they could. Only took 5 days for them to sort of rid themselves of the discomfort, didn't they? That there was no evidence. There's a next section here called Validity of Statistics. I can't say that word very easily. Validity of Statistics. The Guardian has now learned from an early stage, Cheshire Police recognised the case involved statistics. Well, the statistical approach was always the wrong approach. No, it should never have been about statistics. Not from the hospital's point of view, not from the consultant's point of view, not from the police's point of view, because the police should never have been involved. It never should have been about statistics. It should have been about understanding why those babies died, which isn't about statistics. It's about the individual medical picture for them and why they died and what was responsible for that medically. That's what it's about. Never about statistics. We're pulled into a false world with statistics, because statistics is about the reason to bring statistics into this. The only reason it's ever brought in by anyone is to blame someone. Is not to answer the question what happened to the babies, but answer the question who did it. That's the reason to have statistics here, and that's why Breary collated, and the gang of the other 6 around him collated this report. which then becomes a statistical thing, because they're trying to answer the question, who did it, rather than what happened, rather than how has each baby come to this situation? What were all the factors involved? What failings were there on the unit that caused this? Are we operating at a level that we just shouldn't be operating? Are we an unsafe unit, as one of the consultants there said? As she predicted, children are going to die. Talking about Alison Timmis, a consultant there. She called it. She said it very clearly. Will Thirlwall call this consultant? Probably not. Probably not. Should do, but it's probably not in their interests, is it, to hear from her? She was there at the time. She's writing that in late 2015, and she's writing it about a retrospective situation, or a situation that's been going on for some time, where she says no one's listening to us, i.e. going back through 2015. It's unsafe, it's chaotic, children are going to die. She doesn't say children are going to be murdered by a random serial killer. She's saying children are going to die because the units can't cope, because of the lack of staff and a whole host of other reasons. And we're not even touching the Pseudomonas yet. So there's all that to throw into the mix as well. But statistics are all about answering the question, who did it? And and the reason to ask that question is to avoid answering the question, why has it happened? Why has it happened? What has happened? They avoid answering the question, what has happened, by putting a false film of a question over it, who did it? And that's the scapegoating, that's the persecution. Okay, The Guardian has now learned, and they had initially engaged Hutton, this statistician, academic. According to emails seen by The Guardian, in April 2018, an officer on the investigation approached Hutton, who has extensive experience in medical research. Without naming Lucy Letby, he asked Hutton whether she could put a figure on how likely it was to be just a coincidence for one member of staff to be on duty. And quote here, during all the deaths and collapses in the neonatal unit, and then another quote, i.e. 1 in a million, etc. I don't know what that means, 1 in a million. So is the police officer's gone there and saying, what's the odds? Well, he's kind of, because it's a false premise. It's all a false premise to go to a statistician, because they haven't answered the question, what happened? And what is happening? Although Alison Timmis is answering the question in her email. She's saying it's chaos and it's unsafe. They know the answer already to the question, but they're trying to supersede that question or cover it up. This is the cover-up. To ask the question, who did it, is to cover up what happened, because there is no who did it. It's who did it is the trust as a whole. Who did it is the situation as a whole. Who did it is the complete failure of that unit to operate safely. That's quote unquote who did it, not an individual. But there are individuals involved, and the vast majority of them are the doctors, are the consultants of all those medical failures. That's the who. But it's really about the what. What happened? That's what happened. And then eventually you get to the responsibility, the accountability goes to the trust as a whole. But they start looking for a perp. They'll start looking for a perpetrator. That's what they want, to cover up the answer to the other question, which is the real question. What is happening? What has happened and what is happening? And what did happen? They don't want to know the answer to that, because it shines a light on the doctors and the consultants and the trust as a whole and their failures. One consultant recognised it right in the thick of it, right in the middle of it, right in the middle of this arbitrarily chosen slice of time of June 2015 to June 2016. In November or early December, she writes that email, right in the middle of that period of time that's been arbitrarily chosen. Well, it is a period of the highest amount of deaths, it is, yeah, but it's not the full 2 years. But anyway, right in the middle, Dr. Alison Timmins calls what it is. She describes what it is. It's a chaotic unit. It's an unsafe unit. Nobody's listening. Children are going to die. That's it. That's all. They had it there, but they had to cover that up with questions about who's done it. We've got to find someone to blame. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. We've got to find someone to blame for it. One person, and it's not going to be a doctor. Oh no, if Breer is in charge of the witch hunt, it's not going to be a doctor, is it? Not going to be a doctor. So this is all sort of... Anyway, I'll finish this off, because it is important what the CPS do, but she informed the police, that's Hutton, that a proper statistical inquiry would not concentrate on one member of staff from the outset. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Of course it wouldn't. I don't think you should be having a statistical inquiry at all. You should be looking at each individual case about, and then collectively about what's going wrong with the unit. So anyway, but instead required full research into all possible explanations for any increase in babies collapsing, including the medical conditions and prematurity, as well as the performance of the unit. Yeah, well, she's right about that. She's right about that. Absolutely, that's what should have happened. Reviews commissioned, that's exactly what should have happened. But not really statistical. It's about getting into the understanding of each individual case, referring it to the coroner, having an inquest for each death then, if you're that concerned. But they don't really want to find out the failures of the doctors, do they? That's what they're trying to cover up. That's why they've got to ask who did it and point someone out, not a doctor. Yeah. Reviews commissioned by the hospital had found medical explanations for nearly all the deaths. Well, exactly. So they did that, but all those have got to be ignored now, because Breer is on a hunt, and the doctors, that gang of 7 bastards, are on a hunt to find one person to blame. Medical. So they did the reviews. Jane Horton report, the RCPCH, the other. I can't remember all the names of the people, but there was another neonatologist, and then there was another neonatologist, pathologist, a second pathologist as well. So there were several reports, so at least four inputs, 4 levels of input there. So the reviews commissioned by the hospital had found medical explanations for nearly all the deaths, criticised the standard of care on the unit, obviously, yeah, and noted a lack of senior doctors, 2 ward rounds a week, 2 a week. Jai Aram was too busy doing his television work to be bothered to be there, most of the time. And 2 a week rather than 2 a day, which is what they should have been doing on that level of unit with that high acuity, with all those twins and triplets and so on and so forth. The incredible high level of prematurity, babies, high acuity. But they didn't want to do the ward rounds. No, they didn't want to do it. These consultants, they just wanted to find somebody to blame afterwards when it was all went wrong, yeah, and then lie about the babies all being stable and in good condition. Lie about it and lie in court about it. Should be there should be perjury, shouldn't there? But will they ever get charged with that? They should do. All of them, and those so-called experts that testified as well. Cheshire Police then signed a consultancy agreement with Hutton and agreed fees. The documents suggest always money. The force did not proceed to commission Hutton's analysis. I know she would have to get paid for it, but nonetheless, there's so much money around this whole utter debacle, so much money around it. It's made so much money for so many people. Somebody on Twitter today, the account is called Jabe, Jabe, has done an assessment of how much Evans may have earned through this, and it could be in the millions across these years. It's a huge amount of money he's made out of this, Evans. Huge amount of money. There's a huge amount of money that's flowed through this miscarriage of justice. tens of millions. Cheshire Police then signed a consultancy agreement, agreed fees. The force did not proceed to commission Hutton's analysis at that time, but contacted her again in 2021 after Lucy Letby had been charged. All right, so that's good timing, isn't it? A video call was arranged, but an officer later cancelled the call. So they just never really was serious about doing it. And the next bit's in quotes. We have had a further meeting this afternoon where we have informed the prosecutors that we were looking at the validity of statistical evidence again in the case. He wrote in an email. That's this officer, I suppose, whoever he is. Looking at validity of statistical evidence in the case. The email goes on to say that this officer has written, the prosecutor does not agree with our line of inquiry and has instructed us not to pursue the avenue any further at present. See, this is the outrageous bit that the CPS are telling them not to do that, telling them not to do a proper analysis. If they are going to use statistics, to just forget about it, because it will weaken their case, you see, because the only interest the CPS has got this blood in the water now. They just want their woman, they want their man or their woman, and they don't want anything to spoil it, do they? Because they've got no interest in the justice of the matter. They just want to get the person, and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to throw a spanner in the works by considering the truth of the matter. That would be terrible. But we're kind of getting a sense here that the police kind of quote unquote wanted to do it, but the CPS stopped them, which is another layer to it that we hadn't heard before, which is important, and people are saying that this is the CPS breaking, that they shouldn't do this, that they shouldn't have the power to do this. Do they have the power to do this? Obviously they have the power because they did it. The police allowed them to do it as well. The police were happy for them to do it as well. So they're all to blame. It's not as though the police are innocent, is it? Because if it's the wrong thing that the CPS have done here, which it obviously is, then they're all culpable, the CPS and the police. They've just mutually agreed to. They're working in conjunction, aren't they, to get someone. That's the point. Both the police and the CPS. The police aren't trying to, they're the good guys and the CPS are the bad ones trying to stop the police doing the good stuff. No, they're on the same page. They agree. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. We agree. No, we won't do it then. Oh, we thought of doing it. Oh, thanks for putting us right, because it creates a more of a slipstream so we can get the person we want to get. We know we want to get her from day one. We've never thought of anybody else or anything else, despite what Hughes says in that ridiculous hummingbird video. It's never about anything or anyone else. There's never anyone else, quote unquote, in the frame at all. Because they're not interested in what happened. They're interested in who did it, even though they don't even know whether something was done. They don't care. CPS doesn't care. Police don't care. CPS told the police not to do this thing. It's kind of putting the police in this kind of position where you think, they were trying to do the right thing. I don't think so. Yes, they should have done that. Yes, it would have been the right thing to do, but they folded completely, didn't they? They didn't argue with the CPS. I don't understand the nature of the relationship between the CPS and the police in terms of all their protocols or the laws or the rules between them. But either way, they're all in the same mix here. They all decide not to do the right thing. Whoever said it first, whether it was the police pulled out from doing that or the CPS gave them a nudge and said, oh no, don't do that. And the police go, okay, we won't then. We see what you mean. It weakens the case or whatever. So they're all in the same game. As far as I'm concerned, they're all in the same game. Neither the initial engagement with Hutton nor the CPS instruction to the police to drop the line of inquiry into the, quote, validity of the statistical evidence in this case, close quote, were disclosed to Lucy Letby's defence team. The Guardian understands that is crucial, that the defence team should have disclosed that. It's getting really dark again. It's like a Dostoevsky short story. in here, or Harold Pinter. So that's really important, yeah, that they should have done that, because this defence team should have been able to do something with that. That just this alone should be another reason to have an appeal. But will the Court of Appeal take that? They're just hideous. I might have to do this in 2 parts. I think I will. I'll do it in 2 parts. It's too long otherwise. I've been probably gabbling. I'll finish this section about the statistics. Peter Green, Emeritus Professor of Statistics at the University of Bristol. I've got a glitch in my mind about that word now. So said, quote, "This is an extraordinary revelation. Statisticians have criticised the staff chart used in the trial of Lucy Letby as a classic misuse of statistics. Now just to keep hammering on this, the primary problem was to look at it as a statistical issue in the first place. That was the primary error. Well, it wasn't an error. It was design. It was an error by design to achieve a purpose, which was initially for those consultants, those doctors as a gang, eventually led by Breary, second in command Jairam, to push the nurse out of the unit, to push Lucy Letby out of the unit. They would have been happy with that. But she fought them. She fought them justifiably and honourably and rightfully. She fought for her good reputation, her good name, for her innocence, or for her, she's not been judged incompetent in any way at all. Why should she allow them to bully her? Why should she allow them to destroy her? None of that's about statistics. Anyway, where was I about this guy, Peter Green? Now we know that the prosecution decided not to proceed with a proper analysis of Professor Hutton, a distinguished statistician who has decades of extremely relevant experience. You only end up getting to need, quote unquote, need all these experts because it's all been corrupted from the beginning, because it never should have been about statistics. It should have been about what's happening in this unit. Why are we failing these babies? That's what it should be about. Because just to say again, the statistical angle or approach is purely designed and wholly designed and only designed by that gang of 7 bastard doctors to answer the question, who did it, i.e. to scapegoat someone, rather than acknowledging what is happening and why it's happening. So that you end up getting into this world of experts, but it started with corruption. It started with corruption. You started in the wrong place, deliberately. They started in the wrong place deliberately. So I'm sort of ambivalent about this idea of now you're required to need all the experts to undo that original. But I suppose, I don't know. It's just sick. The whole of it's a sick morass of corruption and falsity from the beginning. Okay, now we know that the prosecution decided not to proceed. Okay, who's got decades of extremely relevant experience. You end up in a false position of needing people with decades of experience, whereas the question shouldn't have been being asked about a statistical inquiry about who's done it. Do you see what I mean? We should never be here. It should never be here. It's only because of anyway, I keep going over it. MacDonald, Lucy Letby's new barrister, said, quote, "It is deeply concerning that no information regarding meeting with Professor Hutton or the material she had requested was ever disclosed to the defence." Yes, that is absolutely true in terms of once you've got to the terrible situation of it being a false accusation and then a charge and then a court case. Yeah, once you're there, then of course that should have come into play, and the defence should have known about it and should have made much of it, and should have been the basis of yet another basis of getting the whole thing thrown out of court. Hutton said she could not comment owing to confidentiality. What kind of confidentiality? What kind of confidentiality would that be then? Is it that when she signed that thing with the fees that she's told she can never speak about it? Why all this confidentiality? Why all these? It sickens me, actually, all this confidentiality around it. They're all ways to obscure the truth, aren't they? To stop people speaking. You know, it's the same as why all these anonymous doctors and nurses. You know, why all this secrecy? Why do you need all the secrecy? If you believe in your so-called justice system, why do you need all the secrecy around it? Statisticians have expressed such serious concerns that the Royal Statistical Society, RSS, is expected to make a statement in the coming weeks. The RSS notably intervened previously in 2001, when Green was its president, about the statistics used to prosecute Sally Clark, who was convicted of murdering 2 of her children. Those criticisms helped to overturn her convictions, as well as those of Angela Canning's and Donna Anthony, who had also been wrongly convicted of killing their children. That's interestingly put there, who had also been wrongly convicted of killing their children. Oh, right. As well as Sally Clark. I just thought there was a sort of a subtext there about an acknowledgement from The Guardian here that Lucy Letby has been wrongly convicted. That's the way I'm reading it, but perhaps it was specific between Angela Canning and Donna Anthony, as well as I also wrongly convicted, as was Sally Clark. And the verdicts that the Court of Appeal had upheld. In other words, the Court of Appeal got it wrong. Yeah, because they're brilliant, aren't they? Not brilliant, not good, awful, rubbish, dangerous to truth, dangerous to in opposition to justice is what they are. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll finish off the rest of it another time. Something I wanted to say there. Yes, once you get to yes, that's part of overturning that. That's the fight you're in once the injustice has been done by the misuse of, or the misuse of statistics or whatever other fake science or bullshit science, so-called science, has been brought to bear. Then you necessarily need people who are dealing with statistics in a proper way, you know, in a legitimate way, and experts in certain fields like we're seeing now to combat dangerous people like Evans and some of those other hired guns at the trial. You do need that then, but we should never have got here because it all goes back to where it started. And where it started sounds quite ordinary, and in a sense it is ordinary because it happens a lot all throughout the country in all kinds of jobs, but I'm sure the NHS is a hotbed of bullying, and that's where it starts, with workplace bullying and targeting and scapegoating. And I'm sure the NHS is that's happening thousands and thousands of times all over the country, with members of staff that doctors take a dislike to, or even it could be an instance of certain nurses turning on one other nurse. But you've got a power imbalance here with these consultants and the doctors, and they certainly feel themselves full of power, don't they? You know, they can just go to the nurse manager and say, "Oh, we feel uncomfortable," and they expect her, Karen Rees. They expect Karen Rees just to get rid of her. That's how powerful they feel, you know. That's how high in the saddle they are, and how snooty and full of themselves and arrogant. Arrogance is at the heart of this. Arrogance and bullying. Before you ever get down to all this stuff of a battle of real experts against fake experts, as it were, it's just quite ordinary in the sense it's a bunch of very unpleasant, lying, vicious, childish, arrogant, spoiled, malicious people wanting to take the heat off themselves for a unit for their own failings actually, and put it all onto one person. That's what it's about. And that's what a witch hunt is. It's for a reason. There's always a reason behind it. And it's to escape, in this case, it's to escape accountability for themselves. And that's the reason for it. And when their victim didn't go quietly, and the victim fought back, that's when they got really, 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 really angry. You might call it narcissistic rage. That's the collective narcissistic rage of these 7 bastards ensured that this hell was then opened up on an innocent person, and they destroyed her. And there's something about the malice that it started, the root of the malice, the seed of it, the malice of someone like Breary, the nastiness of him, and the unfair, the deep unfairness of this person, the complete lack of honour of him, and the other people that then accrue around them, like a gang of bullies in a school playground, essentially. No different in dynamics. Doesn't matter whether they've trained as doctors or not. Doesn't matter whether they're meant to be scientifically minded or not. There's a kind of atavism here, it goes back to this atavism of trying to point out, hunt out somebody to blame, to take the heat off themselves, to make themselves feel better, and to enjoy the power of it, actually, to be able to do it. Because that's what they did, yeah. Oh, they can cover it and say, oh no, we were worried about the baby. No, if they were worried about it, if they were worried about those babies and the number of babies that were dying, they would be talking, they wouldn't be asking who did it, they'd be asking what's happening, what has happened. And they weren't really doing that, but they had all the evidence there, but they were deliberately turning a blind eye to all the reasons why those babies were dying, and all the medical failures, all the doctor failures, all the unit failures, the lack of cover, the lack of senior cover, the paucity of ward rounds. They didn't want to adjust that, did they? So, once they've had all these deaths in 2015, they didn't say, oh God, we need to do more ward rounds, we need to start doing them every day. They didn't want to do that, those consultants, because it would have meant them doing something. It would have meant them taking responsibility. They didn't want to change their behaviour. They didn't want to go to the management and say honestly, we're not coping here. We've got to limit the amount of babies we're receiving. We can't deal with the ones we've got. The high acuity level, the staffing levels is dangerous. They didn't have the honour and the honesty and the decency, like Alison Timmis, to write an email and go en masse to the management and say, we've got to pause here, and actually we should be a level 1 unit. We can't function as a level 2 unit, because we're seeing that we can't function, because the safe thing to do is to drop down now to a level 1 unit. And they should have said that at some point in 2015. And then we've got the whole issue about Pseudomonas there, which runs through it all, which I believe they're hiding more about in terms of probably tests on some of those babies. I think they're hiding something there. There'll be more to come out about that, I'm sure. I'll leave it there. I thought I'd get through the whole. No, there's another 2 sections to do. There's quite a bit more to do. So it'll be part 1, then I'll do the other bit another time. It's just, it can't, what was I going to say? It can't continue like this, can it? And the system pretending as though everything's been done correctly, can it? I mean, it just can't, can it? I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for listening. Take care. Bye.